Hey everyone, in today's video I want to talk about something that's simple to use in Flask, but it's also something that would potentially be used in more complicated applications, especially things that are more API based. So if you were building an API in Flask, then what I'm going to show you in today's video is pretty important. So what I'm going to talk about is aborting requests. So why would you want to abort a request? Well, sometimes the user supplies you data in the request that you can't quite handle correctly, and you don't want your server to crash because of this. So you check for it, and if you find that the user has supplied you with invalid data, you can abort the request. So before I get into the code, let me just show you some common HTTP error codes, or just status codes in general. So 1 through 300, those usually mean things are going well. There aren't any issues. So probably the most common status code is 200, meaning everything went okay. But there are some things in here that maybe could be an error, like a 204 no content. It's not an error in the sense that the server failed or anything in the application failed, but nothing was returned, which is a little strange because usually something gets returned in a response. 300s are redirections, and then 400 are the ones that are common in web applications. These are client errors. So the user or the client requests something from your application that your application can't handle for whatever reason. So some error codes are 400 bad requests. That can be because of malformed request syntax. Then we have something like 404, which is common, which means that the endpoint or the resource couldn't be found. Then we have 408 is a timeout. 410 means the resource is no longer available, and all these other ones. And then 500 errors are usually server errors. So your application's not really looking for these because the server fails before it even gets to the application. So I'm just going to talk about 400 errors and how to handle them. So let's say we want to deal with 400 bad requests. So let me first write some sample code. Let me start this from Flask, import Flask. And then app is Flask. And then I'll create a route on the index. And then I'll set this up. So what I want to do is allow the user to pass a value. So we'll call this username. And it won't be on the index anymore. It's going to be on some custom route, but that's not really the important part. And this should be app run, not return. Okay, so let's say a username just doesn't make sense. So let's say a username has to start with a letter, and any username that starts with a number is automatically bad because we don't support usernames that start with numbers. We only support usernames that start with letters. So if I had something like this, like if username, and I just want the first character is numeric, whoops, then abort 400, and if it isn't, then return good username. Now I'm not quite sure if this is numeric is the right function, so let me just start the Python interpreter, or dir and then okay, it's not is numeric, it's is digit. So is that lowercase? Yeah. So is digit. So let me save that and I'll start this server up. So Python, I think it's abort.py, yeah. And I'll just pass a username. So my username is going to be Anthony. And I'll say good username. Let me put that in header so it's easier to see. So it was telling me that the first character in the username was not a digit. That's why I got down to the return statement here. So let me restart the server and then run that again. And this time I'll do 1 Anthony. And now I get an internal server error. And this is just the generic error that I get from Flask, because it doesn't want to give the client too much information on what the error is, because they could be looking for errors so they can do something malicious. If I put it in debug mode, let's see if it changes. So 1 Anthony, and that was the error. So abort, I forgot to include abort here. So if I run this again, I get a bad request. So that's not as generic, but it's a different error. So the first error was abort just wasn't imported, so I forgot to import abort. So if I turn off debug mode and then run it, I should still get a 400. Yeah, and then if I do Anthony alone, I have good username. So let's see, let's try a different error. Let's try forbidden. So let's just say that the user doesn't have access to this particular username if it's a digit. So let me restart the server and then run this, and it tells me forbidden. So it's just giving me the description of the status code whenever I abort, but this can be useful to the user. Now typically on a web app, if you're having it available for, let's say, normal users, so humans, then you wouldn't display messages like this. Instead, you use the error handler decorator and you'd have custom error pages, because this is pretty much useless to most users. But if you're sending responses to machines, so you have an API set up, then you want to be a little more descriptive and use these kind of error messages. That way, whoever is maintaining the interface, or who's ever maintaining the other side of the API, so whoever's calling your API, they will know how to handle it by looking at the error codes that you return, because it's just a different type of user. But really, that's all you have to know with abort. You can pass in any error code. So let me try one more. I don't know all the ones that Flask supports, like 402. That's not really a popular one. I've never seen that one in the real world. So that should be payment required. And I just get a 2 or a 500 error. So I guess it doesn't support 402. If I change this to 403 and then restart the server, I get forbidden. So yeah, it just doesn't support 402, but it's not really a popular error code. It's reserved for future use. So maybe in the future we'll get 402s, but like I said, I haven't actually seen one in real life. So that's all I want to show you with Abort. I'm thinking along the lines with the error video that I did yesterday and this Abort video I did today. I think tomorrow I'll create a video on how to handle errors in some kind of API. So that's it for this video. Look out for that one tomorrow. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you like my channel, please subscribe, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Thanks.